Is anybody else still in a really good mood today? Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews. That's right. I'm your host, John Delray, and today we are covering a Packer victory. Yes, this is shout-outs and get-outs from the Packers' overtime win against the Dallas Cowboys yesterday. Yeah, they couldn't beat the Giants. They couldn't beat the Jets. They couldn't beat the Commanders. They couldn't beat but they could beat damn Cowboys. And yeah, that one feels really, really good to say. The Green Bay Packers, they may be on life support. Their season is on an upward trajectory, but they ain't dead yet. And that's why we are here. So today I'm diving into the get-outs and the shout-outs from the game yesterday against the Cowboys. Before I do that, though, one quick programming note. Obviously, with Thursday Night Football this week, the schedule is all awry. We got Matt LaFleur sleeping on the couch in his office. We got Joe Barry sleeping on his couch. We got Adam Stenavich, I guess, just going home last night. He was the only coach today that said, yeah, I just went home. I enjoyed the victory. LaFleur, Barry, everyone else, they slept on couches, as they said in their press conferences today. So we are not all that different. This is a different week. So Wednesday this week is actually going to be the pregame show where I'm going to preview Packers versus Titans. That's going to come out on Wednesday. And then Friday will be my postgame reaction. I'm not this week going to do a super late night instant reaction to Titans versus Packers. I'm going to save all of my thoughts to the shout-outs and get-outs for Friday following the Packer-Titan game. So, thanks for bearing with me through the program note. If you haven't yet, hit like, share, subscribe. Let's get to 250 subscribers real soon. Okay, please? Please? All right. So, let's dive in. For the first time in weeks, I have more shout-outs than I do get-outs. So, let's go through all the shout-outs first, and then we'll get to the get-out. Right? Let's start with the positive news today. There's reason to be positive, and so we're going to live in there first. My very first shout out, and keep in mind these shout outs are in no order. The first shout out is not the best shout out. These are just players who deserve accolades versus players who deserve jeers. So, number one, I'm actually going to go with Darnell Savage. Look, his coverage numbers were not exactly pretty. I'm going to get to those in a minute. But he did take on the position switch. I'm saying just visually, when you watched the game, he seemed to be playing with substantially more confidence than we had seen at any time this year. He was moving faster. He was tackling more aggressively. It just wasn't the same guy. And we've seen all along why Joe Barry, amongst others, have said maybe Darnell Savage belongs in that star, in that slot role. And no one's ever really fought that. It's just Joe Barry was extremely hesitant because he wanted options when he had Rudy Ford all along. Okay, we don't need to dive into that. But we do know that Savage looked better yesterday than he had at any point in the year. With Eric Stokes' long-term injury, they're still going to need Savage. They can't just bench him and be done with him. He's still a necessary ingredient in that secondary. Maybe they just found a better place for him. And that's been the hope all along. That's why everyone said put him in the slot. Because the hope was to get him in a place that he can play better and more confidently. Lo and behold, he did. Now, in terms of those coverage grades, I don't know exactly. This is per PFF. I don't know. With coverage, with attributing coverage, it's always kind of tricky because, like, if there's two guys on, who do you attribute the coverage to? So, I don't know. This is just what they have listed, all right? Technically, in coverage, Darnell Savage he had 6 targets, gave up 5 receptions for 75 yards and 3 first downs. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously less than ideal, right? However, I would point out, if that includes that big touchdown to CeeDee Lamb at the end, I'm totally going to put that on Alexander. And we'll be getting to Alexander later. But if that's part of that, well, then I'm going to excuse Savage from that. Overall, he did really well against CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb only had, I believe, 2 of his catches against Darnell Savage. That's really good. I mean, that's good work when Darnell Savage was put up against their best. So I know the numbers here may not sound great, but just from the eyeball test, Darnell Savage looked way better, and he's still going to be a part, so it's needed. Speaking of a big part of the secondary, how about Lil Rudy Ford? I'll tell you, I know not everyone loves PFF, but it's a good base for just grading things, right? The highest graded defender of the Packers' victory with an 88.3 PFF grade. 88.3. Hot damn. I mean, 88.3 is elite. So, well done, Rudy Ford. He obviously had the 2 interceptions to go along with his 4 tackles, but I'll tell you, the biggest thing that he was a spark. And we knew he could be when he filled in for Adrian Amos weeks ago. He was moving faster, more aggressively than almost anyone on their defense. And we saw it again. They just needed to play him. And look at what happened. I mean, he attacks downhill. And he is fast. It's like he takes the traits that made him such a good gunner, or flyer as Bisaccia calls them, and suddenly put it into safety. Which is kind of good. So keep doing that. I think they found something special in Rudy Ford. I do. Even if he's a pure effort guy, whatever. They found him for nothing on the scrap heap from Jacksonville, of all places. Jacksonville didn't want him because they thought he was a one-trick pony. And, well, Jacksonville may not be the best scouts. We see that. They're not great. So it's great to be able to find contributors like this for nothing. Gutekunst is showing a real knack for doing so. Next one. The man who flipped the script himself, Christian Watson. Obviously, right? I mean, duh. 4 catches, 107 yards, 3 touchdowns. First Packer since James Lofton to have 3 touchdowns in a game since his rookie year. Anytime you're a rookie Packer receiver and you do something that matches James Lofton, NFL Hall of Famer James Loft, you did something correct. And my goodness, Christian Watson did. Now, was it a perfect game? No, it was not. He still had those 2 crucial drops in the beginning. Wasn't perfect, but boy, you see it, right? I mean, he's like MVS with better route running. 4 for 107 and 3 is downright Randy Moss rookie type numbers, and that's not saying he's going to be Moss, but that's good. I mean, not a lot else to say. Just a remarkable game from a young man who has worked his butt off. And I so happy for him. I ranted last week about the people who need to stop calling him soft. He went out and he showed out. Now you just hope you can sustain it. I mean, obviously he's not getting 3 touchdowns a week, but you see why he's a big part of the offense. You see why the Packers offense has needed that speed all along. It's been there. So really, really good to see. Next up, Aaron Jones. You want to talk about PFF grades? Aaron Jones had a cumulative grade of 85 in this game. That is his complete offensive grade. Just running the ball alone, he got 24 touches. Thank you, LaFleur. Thank you. 24 catches, 131 yards, and 1 touchdown. Beautiful stuff. And last shout out is going to go to Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur. Now, Rodgers in and of himself deserves a shout out. His performance was extremely efficient. He trusted. You could just see it. Just watching the game, it looks different. He looks like a different guy than he looked against Detroit. He wasn't jumping around as much. He wasn't running around. He looked, for the first time in weeks, comfortable. He looked like he trusted his protection for the first time in weeks. Was more willing to just sling it. And I'm not talking about predetermined to just chuck it like he was doing. I mean, going back and executing a play, reading something and delivering it to a wide receiver. Aaron Rodgers deserves a shout out for that. But I'm going to go with a combined shutout for Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur. We talked pregame about how the Packers just need to pick an offense. Just pick one and do it. Well, here's a few numbers for you. The Packers had 415 total yards in this game. 355 of those 415 came off of either running plays or play action. Beautiful, right? 62% of the plays were designed runs. That is the highest rate of Aaron Rodgers' career. And we have been saying it. We have been slamming the table. We have been arguing all season long. You need to become a run-first team. Rodgers can still be magnificent, but he's not necessarily the guy, nor does he have the tools to be 2014 or 2011 Aaron Rodgers. This is a different team. And how can you succeed with this team, with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon and all the receivers that you do have? Play action, running the ball, trusting your O-line. The things that they finally did. And even after the game, Rodgers said in his press conference, something to the tune, this isn't an exact quote, but something to the tune of like, we felt we could run it. Yeah, you could have all year. You know, one of the things that's most enlightening is I don't go blue in the face. I just go red, as you can tell. But like weeks ago, I was just livid about the Packers needing to walk up to the line of scrimmage and stop counting defenders and then saying, uh-oh, there's 8, and then throw the ball. Say, there's 8. But I have a good offensive line, and I have Aaron Jones, and I have A.J. Dillon. It's 4th and 1. We're fine. We're going to get that yard. Impose your will and dictate what you want the other team to do, not the other way around. Oh, finally. Last night was one of the highest rates of the season that they've seen a stacked box and still ran into it. And they ran for over 200 yards in the game. And when you run the ball so well and you have speed on the outside that Christian Watson offers, suddenly play action works. And I know Christian Watson earlier in the season was dealing with injuries. He was just a gadget guy. Okay, so they were banking on Sammy Watkins to be that guy, as we saw earlier in the year when he had nearly a 100-yard game. Like we see, they were dealing. It was very fragile. It was fragile. But they had the pieces to make a competent offense if they ran it how it needed to be designed. And in the last 5-game losing streak, they got away from it. They forgot who they needed to be. And then we saw signs of hope in Buffalo, but the defense couldn't keep up with Buffalo. You can't be a run-first team and have your defense give up 3-play touchdowns every single drive. You just can't. No matter what. But you know what? It worked. It finally worked. This is the team the Packers were meant to be. Now you just hope it's not too late. Because this was remarkably efficient by Rodgers. Not every play call from LaFleur was perfect, but they exploited Dallas where they could. We knew the run defense is where you can be exploited. They just finally did it. Now, let's get to the get-outs. I've got just a couple of them. One, Preston Smith. And this is not to say that Preston Smith had a bad game. What I am saying is Rashawn Gary is out for the rest of this year. We saw the effect that had of the game yesterday. Joe Barry had to call more creative things. He had to get more creative in how to force pressure, which is something I wish he would have done even when he had Rashawn Gary. But we saw it. And then at times when he didn't dial up something creative or exotic, we saw that the pass rush just didn't get there. You know, Preston Smith yesterday had a total pass rush grade of 58.5 per PFF, and he had only 2 pressures. I'm sorry, Preston, but with Rashawn Gary out for the rest of the year, you now need to be edge 1. You now need to be that guy. And it's part of the next man up thing, right? Preston is a very good outside linebacker, but it is time that he ascends to being the number 1 pass rusher on this team. And he's capable. We've seen the flashes before. But his road is now harder with Gary out. And Joe Barry can't always, especially with all the injuries everywhere else with secondary, inside linebacker, etc., Joe Barry can't always be creative or exotic. He can't always send extra guys. So eventually Preston Smith has to start winning more. Because the Packers still need a pass rush, even with Gary out. And we saw that it's lacking. You're not going to bank on Jonathan Garvin to do it. Kingsley Enagbare, he played pretty well, but come on, are you going to expect him to replace Rashawn Gary? Preston Smith needs to become that guy. Quickly. Number 2, Jay Alexander. He had some nice plays in this game, but boy, he got caught flat-footed on that CD touchdown, and after the game, he said that one was 100% on him. He had that very questionable play at the end of the game where the refs did not call pass interference. They could have. Yeah, I mean, they could have. I'm not saying it's right or wrong that they did or didn't. I'm just saying you watch that again and they could have. It's one of those plays where, like, no matter who you're rooting for, you're going to have feelings. Now, they didn't call it, but they could have. It just wasn't his best game. It really wasn't. And it's like in a game that was must win, that you're going up against a guy like CeeDee Lamb, you're going against a good passing attack, you're going against a good offense. Not a great one, but a good offense. You expect your star players, your highest paid players, to show up and ball out the most, and Jair normally does, but this is just one game that he just didn't. And then the last get out. This one goes to the coaching staff. Now, for the most part, things were done very well yesterday. You certainly saw there were some questionable play calls. It would be mostly the series where Aaron Rodgers looked like he wanted to rip Matt LaFleur a new one. But, but for the most part, they called a good game. And I will say, like, LaFleur stuck to, just like I was saying in the shout-out, like, they stuck to who they are. But here's why they find themselves in the get-out category, too. They need to start making adjustments quicker. Look, I personally am a very long-range guy. If I were in charge of an NFL franchise, I'm going to run it just like the Steelers, just like the Packers. You want to be coach here? I'm not signing you to a 2-year deal if you're head coach. I'm signing you to a decade. Like, bring me the Bill Cowhers, the Mike Tomlins, the Mike McCarthys. I'm bringing in people who are going to last a long time. But it is one flaw, seemingly, of this coaching staff. And I understand incredibly long leashes. You want guys to develop, right? But come on, Amari Rodgers? Come on. I mean, you just saw it coming. And then the muff happens. He loses the fumble. And you damn near lost the game because of that. You had all the momentum working for you. Your defense makes this huge stop. You get the punt. Like, all of it was working for you. And then it's damn near screwed up because the second-year punt returner, wide receiver guy just can't hang on to the football. And I've said I want him on offense. I want him to go play slot. I'm not giving up on Amari Rodgers, but it's becoming clear that this situation is not best for him. And it was kind of clear weeks ago. I'm not the type where a dude makes one mistake and you bench him, but a pattern? Time to reevaluate, and it shouldn't have taken this long. Pair that with Savage moving to the nickel, playing Rudy Ford at all. I mean, after he filled in for Amos, it should have been clear that Ford should have been on the field more. Giving Aaron Jones the ball more. Putting Yash at right tackle. Elton back to guard. There's just been a litany of things this year that the coaching staff just... I don't want to use the word behind, but they're slow. Joe Barry playing guys 10 yards off. They're still doing it, but they're doing it a little bit less. It's just they're slow. And winning covers that up. But the Packers now are sitting a place in their season where they are 4-6. This is a momentous win, a turn the season around type win. But they need to keep going this successfully in order to make the playoffs. Like, you dug yourselves into such a hole that the margin for error is now tiny. Which means you can't be slow anymore. Now you got to win, and you got to win every single time. I mean, you got to walk into every single game like it's a playoff game for the rest of the way. Just like the run-to-table stretch. And that means that you can't give such long leashes every single time. If there's reason to believe, sure, but Amari Rodgers, it's not like he fumbles once and then rips off a 50-yard return the next time. you're keeping faith in a guy who keeps on getting 10, 12-yard returns as the good ones. So, still more reflection there needed, I think. But overall, feels awfully good to give more shout-outs than it does get-outs. It really does. So, Packers are back to their winning ways. I will be back Wednesday with the preview for Packers versus Titans. Another nationally televised matchup for your Green Bay Packers. It's like they're popular. So, I will be back Wednesday with that preview. And then, of course, Friday. Remember, no late night Thursday night video this week. I will just be back Friday with all of my thoughts for Packers versus Titans. Go have a great night. Have a great day tomorrow. And as always, go Pack Go.